I walked into my grandmother's birthday dinner, and every smile felt sharpened like a blade. They whispered about me for years, claiming I faked my success after cutting ties with them. Tonight, my sister Serena had gone further. She had hired private investigators to strip away what little dignity I had left. The envelope sat on the table, its presence heavier than the chandelier above. My family leaned forward, eager to watch me unravel. But as the report opened, I saw their faces drain of color, and I realized this night would destroy someone, but it would not be me. The restaurant glowed like a studio set, every table centerpiece identical, every candle flickering in perfect rhythm, as if Serena herself had choreographed the flames. It wasn't just Grandma Evelyn's birthday, it was a production, a spectacle curated for the family's image. Serena moved through the room like a hostess of her own show, her phone held high as she recorded stories for her followers. I stepped in quietly, shoulders squared, clutching the tiny silver bracelet on my wrist. It had been Grandma's gift years ago, the only token she ever gave me that wasn't shared with Serena. That small weight steadied me more than my carefully chosen dress or painted smile. "Camille, you came," my mother said, brushing her cheek against mine with a breath that smelled of wine and disapproval. "We weren't sure if you'd manage." Before I could reply, she clasped Serena's hand, praising her for organizing the perfect celebration, marveling at the flowers Serena had chosen, the chef she had convinced to prepare a custom menu. My father added, "Serena always sacrifices so much for this family." Then, as if on cue, his eyes flicked toward me. "Not everyone understands duty." Their words were blades covered in silk. I smiled and said nothing. Grandma, wrapped in her shawl, sat in the corner, her frail frame dwarfed by the grand chair Serena had selected for aesthetics. I went to her side and adjusted the shawl around her shoulders. Her hand, thin and warm, pressed mine. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered. The room swelled with chatter, cameras flashing, wine poured. From across the table, a red ribbon glinted atop a small envelope among Grandma's gifts. "You noticed it, didn't you? Hold on to that detail. It matters later." The first toast began, Serena rising with a glass of champagne, thanking everyone for celebrating Evelyn's legacy. Her voice carried over the clinking of cutlery. I sat still, my bracelet pressed against my wrist, absorbing the performance. But then, just beyond the glass doors, I caught a glimpse of a man in a dark suit checking his watch, an envelope tucked beneath his arm. My pulse quickened, though no one else seemed to notice. The program continued. A slideshow flickered onto the wall, images of childhood birthdays, vacations, milestones. But as the minutes passed, it became painfully clear my presence had been erased. Photos where I had stood beside Serena were cropped so that only her smiling face remained. Videos cut off just before I spoke. In the narrative Serena built, I barely existed. A hush fell over the room as a new clip appeared. Our family group chat projected on the screen. Serena's phone mirrored, perhaps accidentally. Cousins and uncles laughed in digital text bubbles. Camille pretending she has a career. She probably lives off handouts. Wait until she slips. My aunt muttered, "Oh dear," as if embarrassed for me, not for them. "That was a mistake," Serena said with a faux gasp, hand pressed to her chest. "I meant to show Grandma our vacation photos." She smiled, the kind that cut deeper than scorn. My parents shook their heads. "Don't be so sensitive, Camille. We tease because we love you." Their smiles were cold, practiced. I felt heat rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I leaned back, pulled my phone from my bag, and typed to my closest friend, "If it escalates, I leave. I won't give them the show they want." My thumb hovered over send, but I pressed it firmly. Then a hand gripped mine beneath the table. Grandma's fingers, fragile yet steady, squeezed. "You're here," she said softly. "That's enough." Her words settled me, just as Serena's phone lit up on the table. The screen flashed with a notification. She glanced at it quickly, lips curving upward. The message was short, direct, impossible to miss even from my seat. "PI report delivered." "Proceed?" The air grew heavier after Serena's phone lit up. She rose from her seat with the ease of a ringmaster ready to cue the next act. "Family deserves clarity," she said, her voice slicing through the chatter. A few cousins clapped politely, unsure what performance they were about to witness. It began with whispers. A cousin leaned across the table, murmuring to another, "I heard Camille's nonprofit isn't even real. A cover for something." The words spread like perfume, sweet at first, poisonous as it lingered. By the time dessert plates were cleared, half the room carried some version of the story. The truth? Serena had been seeding these rumors for months. According to her, my nonprofit was a sham, just a glossy website and borrowed photos. She claimed a wealthy benefactor kept me afloat, a man I couldn't possibly name because he didn't exist. Her gossip evolved with every retelling until my supposed deception became family folklore. Tonight was her crescendo. A sudden flurry of beeps and buzzes lit up the room. Several relatives pulled out their phones. Within seconds, files appeared in their airdrop, screenshots of bank statements, invoices blurred just enough to look incriminating. The dates didn't line up, but few noticed. Did you? The March 2021 invoice Serena waived was marked 3 months before the nonprofit even filed incorporation papers, but no one stopped to check. In the haze of spectacle, no one wants details, just blood. My parents scanned the images with grim nods. "We've worried about this," my father said to no one in particular, voice rising so the table could hear. "Camille needs accountability. This isn't healthy for the family name." Mother followed with a sigh. "We love you, darling, but people are talking. Tonight we'll clear the air." Her gaze lingered on Serena like an accomplice awaiting her cue. My chest tightened, but I refused to let them see the quake beneath my ribs. Instead, I excused myself, stepping onto the patio where night air met my skin like a balm. I clutched the bracelet on my wrist, thumb rubbing the silver as I counted breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Ground yourself, Camille. The hum of cicadas drowned out the laughter inside. For a moment, I remembered who I was outside these walls. When I turned back, the courier in the dark suit had entered. He carried the thick envelope, stamped in bold black letters, Hendricks and Cole Investigations. My stomach flipped, though my face remained still. The room hushed as Serena gestured him forward, her smile radiant with anticipation. She tapped a glass. "Everyone, a moment. Tonight is not just about celebration. It's about honesty. Too long have whispers clouded our gatherings. So I've taken the initiative to bring in facts." She gestured to the courier, who handed the envelope to a man seated near the dais. A private investigator. Gasps rippled. A few leaned closer, eager. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. My mother's eyes gleamed with vindication. "At last," she murmured. Chairs scraped against the floor as Serena orchestrated a rearrangement. In minutes, the tables shifted so that I sat directly under the chandelier, light glaring down like an interrogation lamp. All eyes fixed on me. This wasn't dinner anymore. It was a tribunal, and I was the accused. "Transparency is love," my father declared as if reading from a script. "If you've done nothing wrong, Camille, you'll welcome this." I looked at Serena, her smirk sharp enough to draw blood. But inside, something unexpected flickered. She was unsettled by my calm. Perhaps she expected tears, protest, denial. Instead, I folded my hands on the table and waited. "You caught it too, didn't you?" The doors at the back had been shut, the locks turned discreetly by one of Serena's friends. If truth were the goal, why trap us inside? The investigator adjusted his glasses, pulling papers from the envelope. He cleared his throat, ready to expose my supposed lies. My family leaned forward like an audience awaiting fireworks. Serena's phone recorded the scene from a perfect angle, no doubt prepared for her curated highlight reel. But then, the man's voice surprised us all. "Subject, Serena Vale." The room froze. Serena's smile cracked. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the one under the blade. The investigator's voice echoed, each syllable slicing through the festive air that now hung brittle and sharp. Subject, Serena Vale. The words floated like a verdict before the evidence even arrived. Serena froze, smile stiff, eyes darting toward the envelope as though it had betrayed her. My parents stiffened in unison, their practiced expressions faltering for the first time. The investigator pulled the first set of documents free and spread them neatly on the table. Black and white copies of property deeds, loan agreements, and liens stamped with Grandma Evelyn's name. A hush swept the room as relatives leaned forward, mouths parting in disbelief. "These," the investigator said evenly, "are records of quiet loans taken in Evelyn Vale's name over the last 2 years. Amounts small enough to avoid immediate scrutiny but significant in accumulation. Authorization signatures appear inconsistent." Gasps rippled. Grandma clutched her shawl tighter, trembling. My father's lips parted, then closed again, no words emerging. My mother shifted in her seat, hands gripping her wine glass so tightly the stem threatened to snap. The investigator continued, flipping pages with methodical precision. Additionally, there are records of attempted sale on the Vale family's heirloom property. These attempts were conducted covertly, without Evelyn's knowledge, using falsified proxy documents. A murmur grew, louder this time. Relatives whispered to one another. Serena's complexion paled under the chandelier's glare, her breath quickening, fingers twitching against the tablecloth. "And finally," he said, sliding the next set of documents across, "cross-referenced financial statements show no irregularities in Camille Rhodes's non-profit accounts. Claims of suspicious benefactors or falsified funding are not substantiated. In fact, timestamps on the supposed evidence contradict these rumors entirely." Every whisper died. My parents looked at one another, their faces blanching, a lifetime of certainty unraveling in the span of minutes. My mother's gaze landed on me, confusion and denial wrestling behind her eyes. My father sank back in his chair, shoulders slumping as though the weight of proof pressed against his chest. The silence stretched until I leaned closer to Grandma, pressing my lips near her ear. "You're safe with me," I whispered, my hand covering hers on her lap. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, but a faint nod reassured me. The investigator shifted uneasily, his thumb grazing the corner of the papers as though deciding how much further to go. "There is an addendum," he said finally, his voice cautious. "Information obtained only this afternoon." Every head turned. Serena's hands shot up. "This is a mistake," she hissed. "This is fabricated. Someone's lying." But her protest drowned in the collective anticipation that surged through the room. He withdrew a smaller folder, the seal freshly broken. From it, he produced transcripts of audio files. "Voice recordings," he explained, "provided by a verified source. These are of Serena Vale, coaching an individual to deliver false testimony regarding her sister." The room tensed. He pressed a button on a small recorder. Serena's voice filled the air, unmistakable, coaxing someone to claim they'd seen Camille exchange envelopes with a supposed benefactor, instructing them on dates, fabricating details. The metadata stamped across the transcripts revealed heavy edits, obvious tampering to align with Serena's accusations. "Stop it!" Serena shouted, rising from her seat, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. Those are out of context. Anyone can edit audio." But the investigator was unshaken. He laid down the final page, a printed email between Serena and a banker. "Lawfully obtained by the account owner," he clarified. The letter was damning. Serena had attempted to access Evelyn Vale's trust funds, framing it as urgent family needs. The banker refused, requesting Evelyn's direct approval. Serena had pressed again, insisting time was critical. The color drained from my parents' faces completely now. My mother's hands trembled. My father tried to rise but collapsed back into his chair, speechless. Serena's mask shattered as she clutched at them, searching for solidarity, but they were too stunned to respond. I sat perfectly still, my heart hammering, but my body calm. I realized, with dawning clarity, that none of this had been orchestrated by me. My silence had never been complicity. It was the weapon they hadn't expected. The investigator folded the documents, but before he could conclude, Grandma Evelyn pushed back her chair. She rose slowly with a steadiness that defied her frailty. All eyes turned to her. She lifted her thin hand and pointed at the red ribbon on the gift table. "Bring that to me," she said. A cousin obeyed, placing the small envelope in her grasp. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a tiny brass key glinting under the lights. "This key," she said, her voice firm despite its quiver, "is to my safe deposit box, where the originals are kept, where Serena cannot touch them." The room erupted into murmurs, the revelation striking like thunder. Of course, the ribbon, the detail ignored in the glamour of Serena's pageantry. "You remembered it too, didn't you?" The signal had always been there. The investigator inclined his head. "It was Mrs. Evelyn Vale herself who extended the retainer on this investigation. She suspected coercion, manipulation, and deceit. I was hired not by Camille, but by your grandmother." A stunned silence blanketed the table. Serena's mouth fell open. "Grandma, you did this to me?" Evelyn's eyes hardened. "I protected what was mine, and what is Camille's by right. I won't watch you dismantle this family for greed." Serena's jaw trembled. The performance had collapsed. The spotlight she had demanded now seared her, unrelenting. Grandma turned to the investigator, her hand steady on her cane. "Tell them," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority, "who paid your retainer renewal?" The man adjusted his glasses and looked across the sea of shocked faces. The weight of his pause pressed into every chest, every held breath, every flicker of dread in Serena's eyes. The investigator cleared his throat, his gaze moving gently toward Grandma. "Yes, Mrs. Evelyn Vale herself extended the retainer. She suspected tampering in her own paperwork and wanted clarity before signing anything else." The words sank into the room like stones dropped into still water. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, their silence louder than outrage. Serena collapsed into her chair, her trembling fingers scraping the table's edge. For the first time, her eyes darted toward me, desperate for an ally, but I gave her nothing but quiet steadiness. I did not gloat. That was what she expected: anger, triumph, smug vindication. Instead, I rose from my chair, poured a glass of water, and placed it before her. "Drink," I said gently. Then I turned to my mother, who clutched her chest as though the weight of shame had pressed it hollow. "Sit down, Mom. You don't need to stand for this." A waiter scrambled to bring her a chair, and I guided her to it, careful not to let bitterness taint my touch. The room's tension bent into something more complicated, relief and confusion woven together. I looked around, then spoke. "Serena wasn't always my enemy. Once, when we were little, she stood between me and two girls who wanted to pull my hair out on the playground. She told them if they touched me, they'd answer to her. That's the sister I wanted back. That's the Serena I believed in, until I couldn't anymore." Serena's head snapped up, eyes wet, but the mask slipped again as quickly as it faltered. The investigator nodded, closing the folder. "The truth stands. That is the record." But truth never settles gently. One uncle, emboldened, muttered, "Favoritism did this. They coddled Serena for years, blamed Camille for everything." His words triggered a ripple. Others echoed, admitting what they'd seen but never dared say. My father tried to regain control, his voice trembling with the effort. "That's enough. This isn't about favoritism. It's about—" His words trailed, the hollowness exposed. I met his eyes. "Dad, I won't fight for your approval anymore. I won't sit at this table as your scapegoat. If I stay in this family, it will be as myself, not as the shadow of your chosen daughter." My tone held no venom, only finality. The silence thickened. Then, beneath it, Serena leaned close to my father, her whisper sharp enough to cut glass. "Then we use the video." The phrase lingered in the air like a storm cloud. Moments later, Serena stood abruptly, unlocking her phone. The screen brightened, casting her face in a blue glow. "You want to see the real Camille? Here." She projected a clip onto the wall. The footage showed me at my nonprofit's office, sitting across from a man with an envelope. Serena's voiceover narration boomed, Here she is, taking money off the books. Proof that her so-called nonprofit is nothing but a scam. Gasps broke out again, the family leaning forward as if fresh fuel had reignited the spectacle. But you noticed it too, didn't you? The grant cycle number printed in the corner, 2020. That program never ran that year. Pandemic closures had canceled it. I didn't need to speak. The investigator stepped forward, flanked now by Grandma's attorney, a small, silver-haired man who opened his briefcase with unhurried precision. This video, the PI said, is a stitch. Multiple clips pieced together. Metadata confirms edits. And the grant cycle referenced? Public record shows it was canceled. There was no funding, no envelope. The footage is a fabrication. The attorney produced stamped documents, placing them under the light. Camille's accounts are transparent. Annual audits confirm no misused funds. The room swayed with murmurs again, this time not against me, but against Serena. Her desperation curdled into hysteria. She banged the table. "It's real! You're all blind! She's fooled you!" But her cries found no echo. Instead, Grandma's hand lifted, the red ribbon envelope clutched in her palm. She opened it, pulling out a folded document, her voice steady despite the strain of the moment. "This," she said, "is my codicil. It moves my medical power of attorney and limited trust oversight away from Patricia and Leonard Vale. It names a neutral fiduciary to handle finances, and it names Camille as my patient advocate." Gasps scattered like sparks. My parents froze, their mouths open in silent protest. Serena's eyes widened. "You can't." But Grandma's gaze silenced her. The attorney nodded. "This codicil has already been notarized. Tonight was not its execution. It was its unveiling." The words hit harder than any accusation. My parents' faces drained of color, the ground shifting beneath them. Then Leonard's voice cracked through the chaos, raw with fury. "Over my dead body." The room froze. The words, "over my dead body," still reverberated when the attorney stepped forward, calm and unyielding. "Mr. Vale," he said, "the codicil is legally binding. Any attempt to obstruct it will result in immediate review and removal of your fiduciary privileges. The statutes are clear. Interference is considered coercion, and coercion voids your authority entirely." The blow landed harder than Serena's accusations ever could. My father's mouth opened, then closed, the threat extinguished before it left his lips. My mother's hand found his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, urging him to silence. Around the room, relatives who had once chuckled at Serena's jabs or nodded along with my parents' dismissals now looked away. Eyes dropped to tablecloths, to half-empty wine glasses, to anything that wasn't me. The jury of family had dissolved, leaving behind only shame. I stood, my voice steady but soft. "I won't ask for charges to be pressed tonight. This isn't about revenge. Grandma deserves peace, not a circus." A ripple of relief crossed the room, though Serena's face contorted in fury. I turned to the staff hovering nervously by the door. "Please, could you box the cake? Grandma hasn't even had a slice yet." My words broke the tension, like a match snuffed by fingers. Together, I helped them slip the frosted layers into containers, sealing sweetness into cardboard, a small human act in the ruins of spectacle. Grandma smiled faintly as I placed a corner piece in her hand. "For tomorrow," I said, but the reprieve was brief. Serena rose, her chair clattering behind her. She clutched her phone, already streaming. "Look at them!" she shouted to an unseen audience. "Liars protecting liars! This family has always hated me!" She stormed toward the doors, her camera shaking with each furious step. The feed caught relatives flinching, my parents pale and motionless, me standing quietly at Grandma's side. The comments rolled in faster than her footsteps. "Wait!" The PI showed proof. "Didn't she forge Grandma's name? Check receipts." The digital tide shifted even before she slammed the doors behind her. I exhaled slowly, the weight pressing less heavy on my chest. The fallout came quickly. Within minutes, a cousin's phone buzzed. He glanced down, eyes widening. Then he looked up, voice trembling. "She? She leaked everything, the group chat, her whole plan. He held the screen aloft, and there it was. Serena's own words, instructing cousins to record Camille breaking down and catch her fake answers on camera. She had plotted humiliation like content strategy, her family reduced to props, her grandmother a stage. Screenshots scrolled on every phone in the room. The silence that followed was colder than any anger. My parents sat frozen, the mirror finally shoved before them. Their golden child was no savior. Their favoritism had nurtured this collapse, and there was no applause left for either of them. I bent, offering my arm to Grandma. "Let's get you home." She took it gratefully, her frailty grounding me more than my strength steadied her. We walked past the wreckage of centerpieces and untouched champagne, past relatives who parted silently, unwilling to meet my gaze. At the door, the PI caught my attention. He slipped a small card into my hand. "For any support," he said quietly. "Pro bono. Some clients earn it." His eyes flicked toward Serena's absence, then softened as they returned to me. I nodded, sliding the card into my purse. Outside, the night was mercifully cool, the air clean after the suffocating weight of the banquet hall. I opened the car door and guided Grandma into the seat. Her hand trembled as it settled over mine. "You did well," she whispered. I smiled faintly. We both did. Before I closed the door, she tapped my bracelet with her knuckles. Her eyes gleamed with something more than exhaustion. "Open it when you're ready," she said. I froze, the tiny hinge against my wrist suddenly heavier than ever. Weeks slipped quietly into each other after that night, the chaos of the party settling into memory, though its echoes still rippled through the family. Serena disappeared from family gatherings, her social media accounts first defiant, then silent. I heard through a cousin that she had begun counseling. It was not my story to tell anymore. Her war was hers to fight. My parents, shaken and stripped of the authority they once brandished like armor, were allowed supervised visits with Grandma. No more documents to sign in the shadows. No more whispered manipulation. They came humbler, older somehow, their words softened by consequence. The system that had defined my life shifted in ways I never thought possible. For the first time, I was not the scapegoat, the one whose flaws excused everyone else's cruelty. That role had been retired, and in its absence, the family had no choice but to confront the truth they had denied for decades. The air felt cleaner, though scars still lingered. In the midst of this quiet transformation, my nonprofit received news. A modest grant from a community foundation, vetted, reviewed, and awarded on merit alone. The letter of congratulations came with a check small in numbers but vast in meaning. Proof that integrity, however bruised, still had a place in the world. I pinned the letter above my desk, not as validation, but as a reminder that work done honestly could survive storms. One morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee warming my palms. Sunlight slanted through the window, painting a strip of gold across the plant that had nearly wilted last winter, but now stood upright, leaves stretching toward the light. It was such an ordinary moment, coffee, light, quiet, that it became extraordinary. I had lived so long in chaos that peace felt like an unfamiliar luxury. My wrist rested on the table, and with it, the silver bracelet. I traced its hinge with my fingertip, remembering Grandma's words, "Open it when you're ready." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with reverence. I unclasped it slowly, the tiny mechanism resisting before clicking open. Inside, folded with impossible care, was a slip of paper yellowed slightly at the edges. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was unmistakable, Grandma's script, looping and steady despite her age. Just 2 words written across the center. My compass. Tears welled in my eyes. It was not wealth, not property, not control that she left me. It was direction. A reminder that through every storm, I had guided myself without losing the true north of who I was. Weeks later, at a small community event, the attorney joined us again to announce the creation of a modest education fund established in my name. Not wealth I could spend freely, but resources dedicated to helping young women leave toxic homes and build independent lives. Justice translated into service. Pain into purpose. When the applause rose, I did not hear triumph. I heard closure. That night, I recorded my thoughts alone, not for an audience, but for myself. The best revenge, I said into the quiet, isn't destruction. It's freedom. It's living in integrity, holding yourself gently, even when others never did. It's walking away with your soul intact. In the following days, Grandma and I took a drive along the coast. The ocean stretched wide, glittering under sunlight, endless and forgiving. I kept the radio low, a gentle hum of music beneath the sound of waves crashing against rocks. Grandma gazed out the window, her shawl wrapped tight, her expression one of peace I had not seen on her face in years. We said little. Words weren't necessary. The horizon stretched ahead, vast and promising. For once, there was no stinger, no final twist waiting in the wings. Just peace, earned, not performed,